Hello and welcome back to the Gym Girls Locker Room podcast hosted by me, Sydney Cassidy. Today we have on Ben Parker, the co-founder of the fastest growing running app, Runna. He discussed his own journey, gave just the most amazing insight on how to improve your running. We spoke about accessibility, the differences between men and women and how that affects their running journey, the impact the menstrual cycle has on running, and honestly everything in between. It was a really, really interesting listen for myself and I'm sure for you guys. I am really, really pleased to say that we have a code for you guys. If you listen to this and you love what Runna is about and you want to get into your running journey, you want to give it a go, you can get a 2-week trial on Runna using the code GGLR. That's GGLR. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Remember, you can find us at Gym Girls Locker Room on all platforms. And yeah, let's get on with the episode. Yeah, I feel like we could easily start there. Like, you were down for the Runna kind of collab with, what's that sort of initiative they're doing?
Yeah, so I guess for context, Runna's this kind of online coaching service. We help people all over the country, all over the world. And we've done most of our events and meetups all kind of centered in London, but so got in kind of touch with the Manchester Young Professionals group maybe like 2 years ago. And I came up actually almost exactly a year ago, told the Runna story. We must have been at about maybe 10,000 customers then, which was like a surreal.
A year ago?
A year ago. And that was maybe only a year after launching the app. And anyway, now kind of things are 10 times bigger. To me, Runna still feels this feels like this small little idea that my business partner and I had a few years ago. And we've just been almost head down working really hard. And before we know it, like, it seems to be this thing that like is getting around and excitingly helping a lot of people. And I think that's the thing that means something to me and means something to him, which is that it's an exciting thing that we're doing that actually just like helps people and makes amazing running coaching more accessible for everyone. There's still a lot more to do, but no, it's been a funny roller coaster the last few years.
Yeah, I wonder for people, I mean, I feel like you're massively downplaying it. Like, you two are absolutely crushing it. Like, even from my perspective as I'm in the fitness space, but like, I'm not a runner. Like, to see how many people are using the app is like insane. And just for anyone that didn't catch on for that, Ben kindly invited me to their event yesterday, and it was like there was literally so many people there, and it was like such a nice vibe, and yeah, it's just like so cool to see. I think it really has blown up, and I wonder, has it felt like it's sort of sunk in? Will it ever feel like that, do you think? Like, your success, you've literally just had like the nomination for 30 under 30, yeah. Forbes, insane.
Well, it's kind of funny, like for me, like my kind of goal ever since leaving university was kind of get into fitness, initially personal trainer, qualified as a running coach, Ironman coach, and gradually like spun more and more towards the running side of things. And the thing that for me excites me was always running in the park with someone week in, week out, and seeing them get fitter, get healthier, get happier. And then we went on to launch this business, which meant we could do that for many, many more people. But it also then like very much changed my relationship with seeing that progress, because I didn't get to meet our customers because they're all online. And as a result, it almost like changes that kind of like feedback loop. Then you don't quite realize like the business growing because they're like numbers on a chart on the on the sign-ups and all these different things, but you don't see the happy, smiley people. Kind of like you said, we kind of got nominated and won the kind of to join the list of the Forbes 30 under 30 list, my business partner and I. He's 29, so it's like the last time he can get it. And
just got in there.
And you also, if you found a business as a pair, have to win together. So very much was like our last chance to do it. So that was like a very surreal moment, but also at the same time, it kind of means nothing. And what I mean by that is that like the thing that like makes me excited and happy is hearing about one more person at an event who maybe got purpose through a hard time in their life, or went on to achieve a challenge that they never thought they could do, because we've been able to make what I used to charge over £1,000 a year for so much cheaper, so much easier to use, so much more accessible. And I think in a way maybe that's also why it's like starting to crop up in other circles. And I think it's that like conventionally the people who ran marathons and got a coach would be that real like niche obsessed real diehard fitness person, diehard running person, and as a result they almost stay in their kind of niche, and that's because it's such an inaccessible way to go and train for a goal. And relatively, we've looked at that and thought, how can we make that experience that is great for that obsessed diehard runner who's going to spend a lot of money on their training, and make it in so much more of an accessible way. And then what we found is that like over 95% of the people who train with us at Runner have never worked with a running coach before, and that's because it's one, cheaper, but I think that the other one is that like it's so much easier to get started. So if you want to try out Runner, first of all, you hopefully see doing all these amazing people sharing their journey. And I think the opposite experience would have been doing wanting to train with me as a private coach previously. You'd have to find me on Instagram. You'd have to message me, have a phone call with me for half an hour. Then I'd WhatsApp you your training. And that there's so many steps in the way that if you're like just on the fringe of feeling motivated to get fitter and train for a 5K, that's so intimidating. And then even if you can get over all those hurdles, you then got to pay a fortune. And I think that's the reason why it's kind of like, I guess, being able to grow into like maybe other circles of people who wouldn't have previously thought about getting a coach with reference to their running. But at the same time, I think the reason why running obviously is booming at the moment and has been such a popular sport for so long is that it is such an accessible sport. You don't need much. You need a pair of old trainers and out the door off you go. But at the same time, conventionally, so many people would have looked at running as this relatively the way that you got told is a way to be healthy, lose weight, get out the door, run around your block for 20 minutes as hard as you can, come back sweaty, and that's a healthy life, and do that 3 times a week, but actually hate running. Instead, viewing it as, I'm actually going to run really easily today, and I'm going to make sure I'm running at a pace that I can chat to a friend or whatever it's going to be, or enjoy it. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't feel as miserable. And then actually some of the time going and doing some fun, interesting sessions that you might go do some intervals, and being introduced to this new thing can make it so much more fun. And you're breaking the rundown into these little chunks, almost like sets in the gym. And before you know it, you're kind of doing 6K in a workout and you've had a great session. And at the same time, then it all comes back to giving you those endorphins, but you actually see you start to get better. Whereas if all you do is run around the block for 20 minutes really hard because someone said it's a good way to be healthy and lose weight, you don't really see progress. It's not the perfect optimal thing to do, and you don't really love it in the same way. For me, coming into like the fitness industry, so I came, I did a geography degree, had zero interest in it, and the day I graduated, I started qualifying as a personal trainer and then kind of growing my expertise within the fitness industry. I was always very cynical, looking at all these different businesses in the industry, and there were like 2 particular like examples of ones that I just felt like were so wrong. One of them was kind of like corporate gym chains, so like the big, commercial gym chains. So the big gym businesses, and I went and worked for one of them, partly to gain some experience, but also to work out what I didn't like about it. You have to pay a joining fee. Like imagine like being that same person that we kind of talked about that isn't that motivated, but really wants to get into their fitness, and so they pull themselves up and go and find their active wear and feel like they feel great and take themselves to the gym, and it's like, right, £100 to start. Like that's crazy. That shouldn't be the case. And doing the same example would be that then you've got to sign on for a 12-month contract, and you might just be getting started. And the same experience in the same kind of commercial gym chain that I worked at was that if you wanted to do PT, the minimum would be a 6-month contract, and if you wanted to go on holiday within that, you literally had to double up your sessions the week before because you couldn't just like miss a session. And that, again, it's just not accessible. So I always knew that like I wanted to make sure that when it came to actually making something to help people, you kind of solve that hurdle. And then the other one was kind of the example of Weight Watchers. It's a huge business, but what they don't do is they don't prioritize education. Instead, they slightly trick their customers by telling them about points. And rather than teaching them about calories and how to live a really healthy life and understand food, so you don't need Weight Watchers anymore, they trick you and relatively keep you from understanding everything. And as a result, you maybe achieve the weight you want, think I can do this alone. And because you haven't learned everything, you almost then like probably put on some weight again and come back to Weight Watchers. And it makes some money as a business, but it's not in my opinion, the optimal way to go and help people. So for the same reason in mind, like when we think about how we construct Runner to be as a service, it's like we want to teach you how to be a better runner, how to be a happier runner, so that you can go and run and enjoy that as a part of your life for the rest of your life.
Everything you're saying like massively resonates, and it's so funny, like when I briefly like came up to see you at the event yesterday, I found it really interesting that you said, and like for the record, you're standing on what, 34 marathons, is it currently? Something like that.
Yeah, not all races. So I've done the marathon distance 34 times.
But he's done a bloody lot and he's bloody good at it, right? And he like lives and breathes running. And I just found it really interesting that one of the first things you said to me was like, oh yeah, I don't look like a typical runner. And I wonder like, almost like, do you think that that's something that like holds people back and like almost makes people feel, I feel like with running, am I right in thinking that there's this certain sort of image that people hold in their mind, and if you don't fit into that, maybe you don't look like it, or you know you're not used to doing that sort of thing, you kind of feel like, oh, it's not like something that I can do. And I think that's what is so lovely about what you guys are doing, is that you're actually showing, no, it is for everyone, and you offer plans from literally couch to 5k all the way up and everything in between. And I just wondered, yeah, like, do you think that that's something that like is like one of the main things, like barriers into like getting into running?
I think so often people will say, I'm not a runner.
Yeah.
And we were speaking about Anna before we got started.
Yeah.
She had run a marathon and we were on a run together. She's like, I still don't feel like a runner. And like that is an experience that people over and over again have. And people will tell me, like, even in Instagram now, like they'll send me a message and be like, you're too big to be a running coach. And it's like hilarious. And
what do they mean big?
Well, as in like I've got bigger muscles than a conventional person who's running really fast times. And even to speak for that, in reality, sometimes I'll get to start really in like the front pen of a marathon or a half marathon because of like the kind of the times that I've done. And I'll have people being like, "Oh, sorry, mate, you're in the wrong spot. It's back there. Like this is the 1:15 half marathon pen." And I'll be like, "Oh, okay, that's all good. I'm in the right spot.
I'm right where I should be."
Where I should be." And then like they will try and like outpace me right at the start. And then like I look forward to seeing them at the finish line and just like giving them a nod and being like, kind of like, "What time do you call this, mate? You were meant to be in the 1:15 pen."
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's probably also then what leads back to kind of like the accessibility side of running or runner particularly, which is that like they maybe relate to that. They might be a stronger runner and think, oh, actually I can run a marathon, or I can go and train with this service, because it's not just like conventional looking people at the front of marathons. And I think at the same time, anyone who can put their shoes on and go for a jog for 1 minute, they're a runner. They're literally running. And the things that we're working on now behind the scenes to make Runner smarter will help someone right at the start of their running journey and the person who's doing their 10th marathon. And that's the same when it comes to adapting around the menstrual cycle, adapting around your sleep. All of these things that we're thinking about behind the scenes to make Runner smarter will help everyone. And I think that's the kind of the beauty of it. And we all have the same challenges. We're all not motivated all the time. We all have to get up early and want to turn the alarm off, and we all want to cut our run short, and we all get out of breath, and it's all doing different challenges, but the same challenges. And I think that's the thing, is that we're all in the same boat, really. Like, no matter how strong you get and how great you get at your squats, your deadlifts, it's never any easier. And I think that's the thing that often like puts people off starting, is they're like, oh, I can't do it, I'll never be as good as them. But it's like the only thing they do differently is they just keep doing it. And relatively with anything that we're doing, whether it's recording a podcast, the more you do it, probably the better you get at it. And with that in mind, like the key is just like finding the energy or finding the thing to get you started. And it always comes back to then, how can we make it easier to get started? And I think there are so many obstacles in people's fitness journey because it's this scary, intimidating thing. You see beautiful people on the internet, you see doing these expensive barriers to entry of hurdles of money or location or whatever, intimidation. And so with as many of these, we want to try and really strip them back so that people can get started. And time and time again, someone who does their 5K, does their first 5K, and I think it's the case that we are evolved as a species to be able to run. Like our ancestors would have run ultra marathons regularly through the desert without Nike, without Adidas fancy shoes, because it's the way that we've evolved to be. We've got Achilles tendons, we stand up, we've got these lungs, like we're not covered in hair so we can keep running and not getting too hot. Like we have evolved phenomenally to run a long way. But the thing we haven't done is almost trained our bodies to do that. If we sit down at a desk all day for 10 years straight and then try and run a marathon, something's going to break and we're going to get hurt. And that's where you just need that extra support to guide you to get to the start of that goal and just building up gradually.
Yeah, I know. I think like even just hearing what you're saying, it's like, no wonder you guys are doing so well, because you're really allowing people, like regular people, your customers, to feel seen and like heard. What you touched on a second ago about like, oh, it's very easy to see, these influencers or people online that, that's their sole focus. But like the reality is, for most people, is that they actually have a job and they have a family and they have like housework and they have like responsibilities. And it's like, you guys are offering something that will sort of slot around that. I'm really interested. I heard you say, I've like picked up on you saying like you're working around like menstrual cycles and stuff like that. Like obviously you've been doing coaching for like years now. What are the main sort of differences between men and women when it comes to running?
Our goal is to build to the experience that a Western world, well-funded Olympic athlete would get of having a data scientist, having a nutritionist, having a running coach, a strength coach, a psychologist, all of these different things all in one place, again, at this super accessible, affordable package. And with that in mind, like we need to be doing better. We need to be supporting women with the different needs that they have, supporting men, supporting the differences between age, between doing different heights, different weights, different historical injuries, all of these different things. And then at the same time, people coming in with busy lives, and we want to make it so easy that they don't have to think about all of these complicated things. What stage of my menstrual cycle I'm at, how well slept I was last night, and then actually what run do I go on to do? So with that in mind, like we're at this really great position in time where people are so comfortable tracking their life. You're wearing your Whoop band now, so you know how well you slept last night. In the same way, it's such a common way now for women to track their stages of their menstrual cycle through the Flow app and different services like that. So it's our goal to integrate with all these different services. One of the next phases is to adapt around your sleep. And additionally to adapt around the menstrual cycle, which is the biggest kind of observation or significant difference kind of male to female, whereby women's performance within a month will change, and there'll be periods of time where they're better suited to their kind of speed and strength work, and periods when they're maybe better at their kind of endurance, and then also periods when they're more likely to get injured.
Really?
And so with that in mind, like we should be making sure that like we're syncing up these different weeks in line with the body's natural cycles, but at the same time, like you said, people have their real lives going on. They might have their marathon that unfortunately aligns in the middle of doing a period. And so you can't do it perfectly. So it's a really complicated thing for us to be working on. And there's, as you can probably tell, there's a huge opportunity of all these different things that we can work on.
Yeah, amazing. So obviously there's a lot of people doing marathons, half marathons, doing races this year. I feel like it's really like picked up momentum. I definitely know from our community, like a lot of the girls are doing it, and we've seen some of them doing it already, which is like insane. As a man who's very, very experienced, what would some of your top tips be for just like really making sure you've done all your training? What are those like extra little pieces, like nutrition wise, in that like build up to running the race that you would sort of suggest?
Yeah, so maybe in like the week of the marathon, let's say, so you've kind of done your training, you're kind of feeling like you're going in the direction ready to do it. You kind of want to think ahead to all of the logistics, and this is not just for a marathon but any race. Like you want to make sure that you've thought about what you're going to wear, because the last thing you want to do is buy a really cool, beautiful new outfit and realize it actually just chafes in really uncomfortable places, and then you feel miserable the whole way through the run. Or another one would be doing here online, here on podcasts, whatever it's going to be, that you should be taking energy gels. So you go and buy some energy gels a week before a race and actually realize it upsets your tummy and comes out one of two ends. And that's not what you want in the middle of a race either. So
No.
relatively, ideally, we're trying out a lot of these things over the course of training, working out what works well for us, and practicing all these things. So in the kind of race week, we don't really want to try anything new. I would always suggest in that kind of like maybe second to last or the last run, you're almost putting on your race kit, putting on your exciting shoes that you're excited to wear for the race, and making sure everything feels right and feels great. And then you also want to think about kind of like the logistics, because the last thing you want to do is wake up on the marathon morning at crack of dawn because you've got to travel to the start and actually then get stressed about, oh, this tube's cancelled or whatever. So you want to map out all the logistics, map out what you're wearing, map out what you're bringing, so that relatively on the morning of, all you've got to do is wake up, get to the start, and you're going to be nervous, you're going to be excited. So doing what you can just to calm things down a little bit. And then particularly with a marathon, but it's the same with a half marathon, and it kind of, for any race we're doing, we should be looking to reduce kind of our intensity, so we're feeling really, really fresh for that race. And it can be a really daunting thing. Imagine training for 16 weeks and then 2 weeks before the race, you're starting to do less and less. It almost feels counterintuitive. It feels like you're going to get less fit. And this is what we call like the taper period. But yeah, reducing our mileage a little bit, reducing our intensity so our body can feel really fresh, really great. And then you want to do a few kind of like little workouts that are keeping you sharp, keeping you fast, but without fatiguing your body too much so that you're on the start line raring to go. And at the same time, because you might do a little bit less running mileage, and it'll be the same if you're training for a gym competition, you should be reducing the intensity a little bit so you're feeling fresh, feeling great. And with that in mind, you're going to have a bit more time to prioritize your sleep, prioritize making better meals, cooking better, or whatever it's going to be, prioritizing doing more mobility. So don't necessarily, for those who are running a little bit less as we come into that race experience or working towards your goal, feel like you just need to swan around and sit on the sofa way more because you've got more time in your hands. You can still use it productively, so you don't feel like you're going backwards, but at the same time, you're not going backwards. We need to rest, and that's such a key thing to do right. And it can also lead us to then feeling like we're on the start line of whatever we've trained for so long for, and you feel phenomenal. Like you're full of adrenaline, you're well rested, where you've done a lot of your training runs with fatigue in the body. So you almost go out really fast, and that can then lead to going a bit too hard at the start and things coming apart in the second half. So relatively having a good plan of what you want to do for your race and really sticking to that, and only in the kind of second half or in the last third, letting yourself start speeding up. And if you can get to that place, that's really the sign of having a great training behind you, and then also really like knowing what to do on the race and really sticking to a strong plan. But I think the other bit to think about is also after the race, particularly with a marathon, which is a huge toll on anyone's body. I did a marathon in Paris last weekend, and then this week I'm intentionally being really cautious not to overdo it. The week after your marathon, or the 2 weeks after your marathon, I would suggest, like kind of the 2 weeks where you're most likely to get injured. You've just gone and put your body through hell. You've jumped up and down, traveled forward for 40,000 jumps essentially to go and run a marathon. And that's really intense on your knees, on your hips, on your ankles, and on all those muscles that are absorbing that impact. And as a result, I would basically say to anyone who's just done a marathon, probably don't run for 5, 6, 7 days. And what I always used to say to my private clients, when I had my 40 clients before Runna, would be I would almost ban them from running. So if they do the marathon on Sunday, I'd say you're not allowed to run until the next weekend. And some of them be like, oh, but I just want to, and they feel fresh come the Thursday, and it's like, no, don't run. And part of that is also the psychological side of things, which is it's so great if you can get to the marathon and love running. And some people are going to find it's a real big chore getting out, building the routine and pushing themselves out the door, and they get to this big goal. And then relatively, by saying, no, you can't go on a run for a few days, it makes you really want to go back on another one. And that's the best thing. And the thing that I can be happiest about is that if someone can enjoy their training journey to get to this big goal and then be dying to go out on another run, and then you wait, you go for it, maybe the park run that follows the marathon 6 days later, at that point, your body's going to be ready for it. And again, hopefully, if you're well rested, be controlled. Don't go and race your park run as hard as you can because you're full of all the adrenaline, having done this amazing marathon and feeling unstoppable, recognizing your body's still not fully recovered. That's the most likely chance you're going to get injured. So really keep the intensity low for kind of 2 weeks or so, and then gradually return to that same normal level of training. And relatively, it then comes back to thinking about your year or your races that you're signing up for, really making sure that we don't get carried away and book too many things back to back. Because the last thing we want to do is overdo it, get injured, and then miss out on this thing that we've really enjoyed having as a crutch in our physical, but our mental health and our routine as well. So yeah, there's a lot of little things to think about. But yeah, I think that would be some real advice, hopefully in the run up to a marathon or a race. Absolutely. And then also immediately afterwards as well.
How have you navigated like running injuries, and has that been something? Have you been super cautious and you have managed to like avoid them, or?
So I've personally been on an interesting journey whereby probably from June 21 when I left uni through to 24, I'm a PT having opportunity to have a nap in the afternoon because no one wants to have a PT session in the afternoon, eat well and really prioritize my training. And that's then shifted to now running a pretty intense startup for the last 3 or 4 years, whereby relatively I resonate with a lot more of the problems and the challenges that most of our customers have, which is a busy, stressful life, an office job where you're sitting down all the time. And as a result, I've had more and more injuries relatively since Runna started. And it's been really frustrating because like that's my performance, my exercise is the thing that everything in my life is kind of wired and centered around, and that's what makes me really happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, like I've battled a few injuries, mainly from initially kind of sitting down a lot more and being on my feet a lot less, so I get a little bit weaker. And then when I have time in between work, I'm going out to smash a run, and maybe not warming up properly or whatever it is. So relatively, I'm having to stick to a lot more of the advice that we go and tell everyone else, and be a lot smarter with it. However, at the end of last year, kind of in October time, we had a really busy spell of work where we were raising some investment. Working through that investment process is a very intense time period. At the same time, my kind of main goal of last year was to do an Ironman, which annoyingly lined up in the middle of that, or right at the end of that spell. I then started to get this really like weird pain in my right hamstring, which relatively got worse through October, November. And basically I had what's called like a bulging disc. So one of the kind of pads in between my vertebrae spilled into the spinal cord. And so even though I had this problem in my back, I was having this horrible pain in my right leg, and it's essentially the electric impulses traveling up my back were getting tricked and telling me that my hamstring was in pain, but actually it was just the spinal cord. And so for the whole of December, I couldn't move. I couldn't run. I couldn't even swim because like pushing off the back wall in the pool and changing direction hurt. So that was a really like hard time, and particularly a hard month where I literally couldn't do anything because like, I'm the face of this running app.
It's
and we're
your
helping all these
life,
people,
yeah.
and like I can't even sit at a chair. I had to stand up or lie on my belly and work on my laptop. I had what's called an epidural, so a kind of an injection in my spinal cord at the end of December, and that kind of allowed me to then start moving again and relatively doing the marathon in Paris on the weekend just been. So kind of 3 or 4 months later was a huge kind of reflection point that actually I've built back up to being able to do a marathon again and to be healthy. I still have some sensation in this hamstring from the nerve pain still, but it's so much better. And at the same time, it's now making me so happy and grateful to be able to move and to be able to exercise again. But at the same time, I'm a long way behind where I was 3 or 4 years ago before starting the business. But to some extent, it probably makes me a much better coach because I can resonate with all of the normal challenges of getting up early, having to do a commute, having to sit down at a desk all day, having some real stresses rather than just being a happy PT guy who doesn't have to do too much worry. With that in mind, I've been very intentional to really build up carefully this year, really listen to my body. Something that I've done for a while is I go and see the physio every week. So I've done that for a long time, and obviously it doesn't stop you getting injured, but it does reduce the likelihood of it. And for someone like myself, when obviously it's my work, but at the same time it's the thing that makes me happy. Like exercising, endorphins, progress are just the things that excite me. So if there's anything that I can do to reduce the likelihood of these things happening, then I will.
And so if people are listening and they're like, oh, I'm running and I've got this little niggle and it's just not going away, what would you sort of advise someone who is feeling that? Like, do you avoid anything, or are there actions you can take?
There's lots that we can do, and there's probably it's not going to be rocket science. I'm not going to say some like magical solution that like it's like, oh my god, I'm never getting injured again. It's doing sleep regularly, 8 hours a day, and try and have regular like go to bed times, wake up times, and that's just going to be so good for all areas of your life. You want to make sure you're doing some mobility. So we don't just want to run. We don't just want to do our strength training all the time. We want to make sure that we're actually like lengthening our muscles as well and creating good range of motion with everything that we're doing. Relatively doing strength training is going to be so good because it's going to make us stronger to be able to absorb the impact of running. But at the same time, a lot of strength movements will be a really good way to stretch while strengthening. So doing full range of motion, things like a straight leg deadlift or a Bulgarian split squat and stretching out your hip flexors at the bottom of the lunge. Some of these movements can be a great way to strengthen the body while also mobilizing the body at the same time. So thinking about your sleeping, thinking about your strength, your mobility, and then the final one would be your nutrition, drinking plenty of water and also making sure we're getting plenty of protein, fueling before and after our runs. And they're things that people have heard 1,000 times before. Going and getting a massage can be helpful, but again, it's like an extra thing that comes after those 4 staples, and then kind of massage guns and all the compression stuff that you can get. They're all these extra layers, the extra 1% that you can do, but like the nutrition, the strength, the sleeping, they are not 1%. They're like doing 25%, and it's only nail those things, and then don't spend your money on these expensive extra little bits until you've got those things right. The other one is to really make sure you're building up gradually, not not being like, right, new year, new me, January the 1st, I'm going to run 5K every day for a month. Like, for almost anyone, that will just guarantee you get injured, especially if you've not been running that often beforehand. And so whether it's following a plan with Runna, working with a coach, or learning and building up your own plan, making sure that you build up things gradually. Don't go from 0 to 100. And also make sure that you have a down week every few weeks, or what we call a deload week, to make things easier. Let your body adapt to all that hard training, kind of check in with your body, see how you're feeling, and then continuing to build up from there. So hopefully all those things will reduce the likelihood of getting injured in the first place. Then should you start to get an injury, and a niggle is kind of a funny word for like a small injury. But yeah, relatively, if you start to feel an unusual pain that doesn't just feel like tired muscles and it feels like something sharper or something unstable, at that point we really should initially really ease back, because the thing that we want to try and do is address it really early before it becomes this longer term, bigger problem that becomes harder to solve. So you start to get a little bit of pain, whether it's in your shoulder press or your squats, whether it's with your running, reduce your intensity and reduce the volume that you're doing as well. So that's kind of like the speed work, which is going to be the intervals or tempo workouts that you do, which are the most intense workouts that are going to put the biggest stress on your body. So really kind of reduce those, but then also think about reducing the total mileage that we're doing, and that will reduce the pressure on our body. And hopefully a few weeks of that should mean that a smaller injury or a little ache or a pain might start to improve, and then gradually build back up again. It might be the case that what you were doing before was too much for you, and so maybe don't just jump back to what you were doing before, and gradually ease things back up. I would say if you've had an injury for more than 2 weeks, and it's not getting better just by kind of easing off a little bit, that's the point at which I'd always recommend to kind of go and see a physio. And it is an expensive service, but at the same time, for someone who really gets a lot of happiness and health out of it, it is really worth investing earlier, rather than being like, for 6 months I'm going to leave my sore foot alone, and then actually realizing right now you've really got first of all, you've missed out on 6 months of enjoying these things, and then you might spend a lot longer working through a few months with a physio, which is going to cost a lot more money, and you might need to go and buy these new shoes and these fancy insoles or whatever it's going to be to overcome this thing that's become a bigger injury. So I would really encourage people to hit these things head on, and it can be a really hard thing to do, which is you're in the middle of this marathon that you've signed up for, and you're raising loads of money for charity, and you've told all your friends, and you've told your Strava followers and your Instagram followers that you're running a marathon, and then to have to be like, oh, I've got this slightly uneasy feeling in the side of my knee, and to actually be like, right, I'm going to ease off for a few weeks. But that's key to prevent it being you smash through this sore knee, and then the sore knee becomes a really sore knee, and then you've got to pull out altogether. Or when you get through the marathon, you don't see anyone about it, you just soldier on because you're strong-willed and you can suck up the pain, and then actually you've got to spend 3 months off running, working with an expensive physio for a long time to get back up and running. So it's one of these things, hit it head on, and relatively will really help you to enjoy running that much more longer term as well.
I've got some quick fire questions, but before I do that, I would love to know what's one of your happiest running memories, be it from a race or just something that really is prominent in your mind.
Maybe the proudest or the one of the best feelings I've had in kind of running journeys as well would probably be finishing my first marathon. And at the time I was 22, I'd kind of just graduated uni, newly started as working as a PT, and even doing some kind of running specific coaching as well. And I think at the time my best half marathon was 1:22. And I kind of thought I could go and run my first marathon, and I was ambitiously aiming for a 3-hour marathon, which is a really huge milestone to do as your first marathon. And everyone's first marathon is always just that little bit harder than they think it's going to be. And I was a little bit naive, and I didn't know everything that I know now. So I had never ran more than a half marathon on the start line of the marathon. I thought I'll run the half marathon at 1:30, and then I'll run the second half marathon at 1:30, and I'll be fine, and whatever. And I had told my little sister, who was there cheering me on, that I was going to run exactly 3 hours. And I think she knows that I'm strong-willed, hard as nails, and if I said that's what I'm going to do, that's what I was going to do. And her and my dad were cheering me on around the course at different points, and did the first half, I think, in 1:28.5 minutes, so relatively on track and sticking to the plan. And I think I didn't see her after maybe 25k, where she gave me a Lucozade on the course or whatever. She's then on the finish line kind of expecting me to finish at 2:59, and I'm not there. And I'm slowing down a little bit in the second half, and I ended up coming in like 3 hours and 12 minutes. So still really great time for my first marathon. And anyway, she's there kind of on the finish line being, oh my God, Ben must have died. Like, what the hell's happened to him? I haven't seen him. And like, he's really slowing down. And like Ben would never not turn up. And at the same time, there's always like ambulances going off and people panicking. And so I think like there must have been an ambulance that like sirened right past the finish line during the 3 hour point. And she's like, oh my God, Ben's died. And anyway, I like come to the finish line and I'm like, have loads of my uni friends cheering me on. I'm so happy that I finished this first marathon. It was harder than I thought it was going to be. Absolutely delighted. And I see my sister like right by the finish line cheering me on, but like crying. Across the line and literally like reach over the barrier and give her a hug. And I'm like, why are you crying? She's like, I thought you died. And I was just like, I'm so sorry for being late. So sorry for like making you worry. And I'm like so delighted and so happy that then we both just had this like big tearful cry as we like hugged over the kind of like finish line barriers. Anyway, then she went on to, she's kind of 6 years younger than me, but she went on to do her first marathon, 18 months ago now, when she was kind of 21, on her 21st birthday. So that was amazing to get to see her finish the marathon in Valencia on her 21st birthday.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. It's so funny as well how like our first, for people that are nervous getting into like sport or fitness or whatever, it's so funny that like even when you're like super experienced, often those first memories are like your fondest, and I always say to people, enjoy the journey because you've got such a wonderful journey ahead of you. Being a beginner is the most exciting time. You've got so much ahead of you.
And you can also improve so much faster at the start. Like,
yeah.
Do you mean like
beginner games?
Imagine, well, exactly. But like you get to your first 5K, like you're going to be able to double how far you run and go on to run a 10K. Whereas like, I'm probably not going to double how far I run ever. As in like my longest run's like 127K. Like I don't think I'm going to run a 250 kilometer run. That would that would be a bit impractical. If I'm lucky, I'll get to shave a few minutes off my marathon time in the rest of my life. But I'm not going to be able to take 40 minutes off a marathon time, or whatever, which is something that people can do when they're slightly earlier on in their running journey. But at the same time, nothing changes. Like it's amazing to push yourself to doing a little bit better and to go on to see what you can achieve. And obviously, the better you get, the harder you've got to work to get an improvement. But at the same time, that makes that improvement feel all the more satisfying. So it's almost like we're all at completely different stages of our own different journeys, but it's all the same.
I love that. Okay, right. Some quick fire questions. Running alone or running with someone?
I would go to say running with someone. Although I do love putting my favourite
main
playlist.
Character moment.
Yeah, I do love listening to my same playlist that I know 101 times and going out and smashing that in the sunshine with some sunglasses.
What do you like to listen to when you're running?
I do like a lot of cheese music. I did say at the event last night that I'll listen to ABBA, listen to The Greatest Showman, listen to Cher. I finished my marathon PB with my. It was in the lockdown, so I was running a virtual marathon with my best friend, driving his Mini next to me, music on full volume, listening to Cher Believe. So anyway, that's some good vibes for
love
me.
Love it.
Probably shouldn't tell that to the world, so this might have been a mistake. We'll have to take this down.
No, the girls will be so impressed. They'll love it. Mountain run or beach run?
Oh, I think I'm a heavier guy, like we said, so I like keeping it flat. So I'd definitely say a beach run, and then you can jump in the sea afterwards.
Yeah, but like running on sand, is that hard? I imagine
it's very good for you.
Really?
Well, so if you were to run like almost like like when the waves come up and make the sand a bit wet, so it's like hard but soft. Yeah. Running along that barefoot can be such a good way to make your feet strong, strengthen your calves, and it can also just feel so lovely.
Oh wow!
So no, like you probably look absolutely crazy if you went and did a run in your bikini up along the beach. You probably look like you're looking for attention or something. But no, it can be a really clever way to do some really good training.
Oh, amazing.
But no, and then there's nothing better than when you're all hot and sweaty afterwards going and jumping in the sea.
What's your favourite distance?
Oh, that's really mean. I would say that my favourite event and the thing that means the most to me is an Ironman, which I also hate in the way that like is savage, it's frightening, is so hard, but that's what makes it feel so amazing at the end of it. But I would say my favourite running event to do would be a half marathon, because it's the sweet spot between it's a great achievement, you feel like you've really worked really hard, but you also don't get broken, or relatively, by being a more experienced runner. Doing a half marathon for me now doesn't break me in the same way. I'll be running 2 or 3 days later. I get the amazing atmosphere. I get to enjoy the endorphins. I get to really push myself, get a medal. But also, it's like something that I can do 5 or 6 half marathons a year, and it's not probably going to break me or push myself as much. Whereas I could never do more than 2 Ironmans in a year, and I probably shouldn't do more than 2 or 3 marathons. So I think like my favorite running distance half marathon, but my favorite event as a whole would be my kind of like 1 Ironman that I'll kind of look to do a year.
Nice. Yeah, I have heard that about the sweet spot. I've heard people say, Sid, do the half marathon, you'll love it. Like it's a nice distance to do.
Yeah, I think like the full marathon is this thing that relatively gets so much kind of like attention because it is the distance, but it is so hard. It is relatively a high injury risk. It is, you really need to commit a lot of your life towards it. And running doesn't need to be like that. Like running can be this one stream of a fit, healthy, happy life. You could do your spinning classes. You can do your 2 or 3 days in the gym and push yourself to get a bit fitter in the summer, run a little bit more and push yourself for a 10K and a half marathon. And like, I would say only if you do that and you realize that I love it, I can go further, I want to push myself more, go and do the marathon. Don't do the marathon because you need to tick a box and you need to prove to your friends that that's what you can do. Like, do what makes you happy. And I think like a half marathon is such a nice, happy distance that it also will it won't take over your life in the same way, and hopefully much less likelihood to get injured. But at the end of the day, running is a high injury risk sport. You're jumping up and down essentially for a really long way, and that's stressful on the body. And it's very rare that even Olympians will get injured every few years, no matter how good their training is. And so it's maybe one of the things that makes us grateful not to be injured the rest of the time. But it's one of those journeys we have to go on.
Yeah. What's your go-to running snack?
My go-to running snack. So mid-run, I'm pretty good at smashing a gel, and I almost quite enjoy the taste of them. So I'll go for my SIS gels. And the tropical one genuinely just tastes like Haribo. So
nice.
I know a lot of people don't like having gels. I don't struggle at all. But I think also having I'm a big cyclist, like my cycling, and I'm very used to having my snacks and eating on the bike. I don't struggle having snacks on the go.
Love it. And then this is the final one: miles or kilometers?
I'm in kilometers. I don't know, that you get to do a lot more. So in a marathon you could do 42 or you could do 26, and I want 42 pats on the back than 26 pats on the back.
This is the final part. We asked our community if they had any questions that they wanted to ask you. So one of the questions, this is Runner app specific, is from Sabo, I think. Will there be a triathlon plan that includes swimming and cycling sessions added to Runner?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Ironman coach and passionate Ironman, as I've said. So absolutely in the long term, but at the same time, there is a lot that we want to bring to Runner. So with that in mind, there's a few things that we want to do to elevate the running journey. Like we talked about, adapting around your sleep, your stress, your menstrual cycle, all of these other things, and they are really complicated. So with that in mind, that's what's coming first. So then the triathlon side of things will probably come after that, in the kind of months or years. But at the same time, very much coming. We kind of relatively in 3 to 5 years, we want to have this amazing service that whatever you're training for, running, triathlon, cross training, whatever it's going to be, you can come on. We give you the perfect training. It's going to adapt around all your real life circumstances, and take you that way. We do already have our kind of running for triathlon training. So if you're training for a sprint distance triathlon or an Olympic triathlon, half Ironman, we'll set you the running training to do around your cycling and swimming, but we won't set the cycling and swimming just yet. But longer term, but not a few months, but maybe beyond that.
Okay, amazing. This is from Sky. Beginner and hills, how to tackle that? Best way to not feel like I can't breathe.
Yeah, so hills are a tricky one. A lot of training, and also primarily the way that we'll think about setting workouts within the Runner app will be about pace. So telling you to think about doing your tempo workouts and running at this pace, or thinking about a particular pace for your easy run. But ultimately, as soon as you start going up a hill, pace is going to be kind of thrown out the window. You're going to go much, much slower up the hill and then much faster down the hill. So relatively thinking about training in RPE which I guess you'll know from the gym. So thinking about your kind of relative effort. So maybe on an easy run, we're thinking about running at a 4 or a 5 intensity out of 10. And ultimately, when you're going up the hill, go much, much slower. And as a result, the kind of things to think about would be your technique, really trying to stand up nice and tall, driving your hips forwards and taking lots of steps. If you go and take huge, big, long, leapy, boundy steps, you're going to absolutely cook your muscles. So instead, really think about your form, standing up tall, keep breathing, slow it down, and then almost kind of just try and push through. If you're wanting to go and push yourself for some intervals or your tempo workouts, it may well be, and something that I'll always try and do if I'm going on holiday or if I'm staying somewhere new for a while, I'll try and find a nice good flat area that I can go and do. And whether it's even laps of the same area or out and backs, it can be really productive to find a stretch near you that you can use for some of those other sessions as well.
Amazing. This is from GGLR. I don't even know how to say that. How to manage strength training and running in the week. I feel like this is something that I definitely hear mutterings of, about like the fact that the two can't coexist. Is that something?
Yeah, so there's two things. There's one which I always love to talk about, which is cardio kills gains, which is nonsense, I guess. And the other one would be kind of like how to balance the training of the two. So we'll come on to that one. I always thought of it or knew it was a thing when I was doing in my gym era, and I was from 16 to 21. I didn't really do much running, and instead it was just be big and strong, look a certain way, get huge muscles. It's always said, like, don't do too much cardio, your muscles will fall off. And it is completely nonsense. We will grow our muscles by progressive overload and by having plenty of protein, sleep, rest, and all those other things. What can happen is if we do loads more running, we then stop doing as much strength training. We maybe don't consume as much protein. We don't give that same progressive overload. And as a result, we don't progress in the gym as fast. But so it's not that the running has stolen our muscles away. It's that we've actually just done less strength training, because we're now doing, imagine you start doing 4 runs a week and you've gone down from 6 gym sessions a week to 2. Your muscles are going to progress a little less speedily. Or you might even see your muscles get a little smaller. Additionally, if you're exercising more and burning more calories, you're going to potentially, if you don't change what you're eating, you're going to lose some body fat. And that, again, can make our bodies change as a result. But yeah, it's not that doing cardio means your muscles disappear, but doing less strength training, not consuming our protein, and not really kind of smashing that progressive overload and all of that hypertrophy will mean that we're not progressing in the gym in the same way. And as a result, if your goal is to get big and to be doing really big and strong and do your running, you just got to really keep up the volume in the gym and make sure you're eating plenty. Then the other side to it was how to actually balance the two. And I think, and relatively, I'm sure the way that you'll think about it and the way I always thought about it in the gym was, we're lifting till failure a lot of the time. You're cooking your muscles. They're going to be absolutely fried. To then have to go and do a run the next morning. Like, how are you doing that when you've got these jelly legs that can hardly walk up and down stairs? And doing those two at the same time and having to really push yourself when you're running, that's impossible. And so relatively, it's a case that, like, we relatively should make sure that we're doing our lifting with slightly less intensity. So I would always say to kind of like look to lift to about 80% of failure, because that way you're going to get a lot of the training benefit, but not as much of the fatigue and as much of the DOMs. Obviously, depending on the amount we're training, if we are imagine you're doing 3 gym sessions and 2 or 3 runs a week, looking to kind of not do those sessions on the same days. And if we're doing enough sessions that we're now starting to have to double up gym and run on the same day, try and keep your easier runs on the days of those gym sessions, or even keep those maybe upper body sessions, the ones right before your longer run or your really hard intense interval sessions, to try and balance that intensity over the week. Yeah, looking to kind of like almost think about keeping your fatigue as flat as possible throughout the week. So not doing all your gym at the start of the week and all your running at the other end, or definitely don't go and smash your squats on the same day you've got your long run, because something's not going to go as well. So just kind of looking to balance it, but the key is kind of like looking to do those strength sessions, particularly those lower body strength sessions that are going to use such similar muscles, to 80% rather than to that 100% failure, because then you're going to have these super sore DOMs to follow. And the only other flip side is that with running, it is not only is it jumping around for doing 10 minutes, for half an hour, for 10 kilometers, whatever it's going to be, but it's also always on one leg. You're jumping on your left leg, then you're jumping on your right leg, and you're also looking for power. Whenever you run, you lift your left knee up with your right arm. So you're looking for this diagonal power. And so as a result, we want to make sure we do a little bit more core strength to connect the power, to be able to stabilize our body so we're not rocking side to side as we're running. But also we want to do lots of single leg work so that we're strong enough to do these pushes off one leg at a time. So with reference to thinking about how you build up your gym routines, thinking about doing a bit more single leg work, your lunges, your single leg deadlifts, your split squats, that types of thing, single leg calf loading, and all of that will really help to become a stronger body, to become a stronger runner as well.
Amazing. Oh, that was actually, I didn't even know any of that. That's so interesting. What do you have like going on? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find Runna by searching RUNNA in the App Store, or Google it, whatever you fancy. I'm the head coach at Runna, so I'm Ben Parker Fitness. And if you want to have a 2-week free trial to try out Runna, what code have we aligned on?
GGLR.
GGLR. So just whack that in when you download the app, and you'll get 2 weeks to try Runna for free. You can set up the strength, you can set up the running, and again, you can also chat to us at any point inside the app, and we're there as a team to help you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been so helpful, and I know loads of girls will like massively appreciate you coming on. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me, and hopefully we can get you running at some point as well.
Absolutely. Hopefully. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as we did. If you want to find us, you can find us at Gym Girls Locker Room on all platforms. What else did I want to say? Oh, I wanted to say, do us a favour. If you enjoyed the episode, give us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening or watching on, and be sure to subscribe or follow. This really helps in pushing us out to new audiences and means that we can help you get even bigger and better guests. Apart from that, I think that's everything, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.